Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to speak to you about a powerful principle that, when fully embraced, has the potential to transform your life in ways you never thought possible. A principle that will not only enhance your relationships, but also bring peace, clarity, and strength to your mind. It is the principle of mastering your emotions, specifically learning how to never get angry or bothered with anyone. This is not an easy feat, and it will require work, but the rewards are priceless. Imagine walking through life without being stirred by the actions or words of others, where nothing can take away your inner peace. Today we will discuss the mindset shifts, the strategies, and the emotional control necessary to achieve this freedom. Let me begin by stating a simple yet profound truth. No one can make you angry unless you allow it. This is the foundational thought behind emotional mastery. Change how you see people and situations. One of the most profound truths in life is that our perception shapes our reality. How you see a situation or a person will determine how you respond to them. We often feel anger or frustration when we interpret others' actions as personal attacks, when in reality, their behavior may have nothing to do with us at all. But because we view things through the lens of our emotions, we end up reacting, sometimes without thinking, and allowing ourselves to be hurt or bothered. Take a moment to reflect on a time when you felt irritated by someone's actions. Perhaps a colleague who was constantly late for meetings, or a family member who didn't follow through on a promise. It's easy to feel hurt, disrespected, or angry in these moments, but that emotional response is based on the way you are choosing to interpret their behavior. Let me ask you this. What if, instead of seeing the situation as an affront to you, you chose to see it from a different perspective? What if you imagined that the colleague who is always late might be dealing with personal struggles, or that the family member who didn't keep their promise might be overwhelmed with their own responsibilities? When you shift your perspective to consider the larger picture, when you choose to see people as complex, multidimensional human beings with their own struggles, you free yourself from being emotionally controlled by their actions. Perspective is power. Think about the countless situations where you have felt upset or angry because you didn't understand the full context. This is where emotional intelligence begins to take root. When you recognize that not everything that happens is about you. When you no longer personalize every slight, every misunderstanding, and every delay, you release yourself from the constant turmoil of unnecessary anger. The way we view the world, our filters, our biases, and our assumptions have a tremendous impact on how we experience life. Just as a pair of tinted glasses can change the way you see the world, the lenses through which you view others and their actions can dramatically shift your emotional response. When you look at someone's actions through a compassionate lens, you become less reactive and more understanding. Consider how you might feel when you hear someone's side of the story. You could be angry at someone for not doing what they promised, but when you learn that they were facing an unexpected challenge, that anger softens. What you see as rude or thoughtless might in fact be a symptom of something deeper, a moment of personal struggle or a misunderstanding. When you change your lens, you gain control over your emotional response. Our perception, therefore, is something we can control. If you make the conscious decision to see people and situations in a way that helps you maintain your peace, you take back the power that others may have unknowingly had over you. It's about reframing the narrative. Instead of saying, "This person hurt me," you say, "This person may be going through something I don't understand, and I can choose to respond with empathy rather than anger." A perfect example is the story of two friends, Mark and Jason. Mark was often frustrated with Jason, who tended to cancel plans at the last minute. Mark saw this as disrespectful and inconsiderate, but one day Mark sat down with Jason and asked why it kept happening. Jason revealed that he was struggling with anxiety and had difficulty committing to social events because of it. In that moment, Mark's perspective shifted. He stopped taking Jason's actions personally and began to view them through the lens of understanding. As a result, their friendship deepened, and Mark no longer felt anger when plans were canceled. His response was now rooted in compassion, not frustration. This change in perspective doesn't mean excusing poor behavior, but it allows you to look at the full picture and decide not to let someone's actions steal your peace. It means choosing to understand, to seek clarity, and to empathize with the fact that everyone is navigating their own personal battles. When you adopt this mindset, you'll find that many of the situations that once angered you no longer have the same effect. Stop giving others control over your peace. In a world that often feels chaotic, one of the most empowering things you can do is learn to take full responsibility for your emotions. Far too often we give others the power to dictate how we feel. We allow someone's rude comment, an unfair situation, or an unexpected setback to hijack our peace and our sense of well-being. But here's the truth. No one has the power to make you angry, upset, or hurt unless you allow it. Think about it. Every time someone says or does something that frustrates you, it's not the action itself that is causing you pain, it's your reaction to that action. Emotions are not external forces. They are responses to the way we interpret what is happening around us. The moment you realize that no one can make you feel anything without your consent, you take back the power. This concept is liberating. Imagine waking up each day knowing that your emotional state is entirely in your hands. No longer will you be at the mercy of someone else's words, actions, or moods. Your peace becomes something that you protect and cultivate regardless of what's happening around you. When someone cuts you off in traffic or criticizes your work, instead of allowing your blood pressure to rise, you choose to remain calm. Why? Because you refuse to let their behavior control your emotions. Consider Sarah's story, a woman who worked in a high-pressure office environment. She had a colleague who was always short-tempered and would frequently speak to her in a harsh tone. For a long time, Sarah found herself stressed and anxious every time she had to interact with this colleague. Her day was ruined, her confidence shaken, and her productivity dropped. But then Sarah made a conscious decision to reclaim control. She realized that her colleague's rudeness wasn't her problem, it was his. She couldn't change his behavior, but she could control how she responded to it. So she stopped internalizing his negativity. She took a deep breath, let go of her anger, and remained calm in every interaction. Sarah's transformation didn't happen overnight, but as she practiced emotional independence, she started to feel more centered and empowered. She wasn't giving anyone the right to disrupt her peace. As time passed, her interactions with this colleague grew smoother. The anger she once felt evaporated, and her work life became significantly more enjoyable. This level of emotional mastery can be a game changer. When you refuse to let anyone control how you feel, you shift from being a passive recipient of life's challenges to an active participant in your emotional well-being. You stop reacting and start responding calmly, thoughtfully, and intentionally. And when you do this consistently, you'll find that your inner peace becomes unshakable, no matter what is happening around you. Let go of past hurt. Forgiveness is one of the most powerful acts of self-liberation. Too often, we carry the weight of past hurts, replaying them over and over in our minds, allowing them to shape our present reality. We think that holding on to anger, resentment, and bitterness is a way to punish the person who wronged us. But in reality, the only person we hurt is ourselves. The act of forgiveness is not about condoning someone's behavior or excusing what was done. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional prison you've built around your heart. Think about the weight you feel when you carry a grudge. It might feel justified at first, especially if you've been wronged deeply. But over time, that weight becomes heavier and heavier. It robs you of your peace, steals your joy, and diminishes your ability to move forward. Holding on to anger is like holding on to a burning coal. It only hurts you. Forgiveness is not an easy thing to do, especially when the hurt runs deep. Take the story of Clara, a woman who had been abandoned by her father at a young age. For years, she carried a sense of bitterness and anger toward him. Every time she thought about him, her chest tightened and resentment boiled inside her. She felt justified in her anger because he had broken her heart, leaving her with emotional scars. But one day, Clara came to a painful realization. The anger she carried toward her father wasn't punishing him, it was punishing her. It was affecting her relationships, her ability to trust, and her peace of mind. The weight of that resentment was holding her back from living the life she deserved. So Clara made a decision. She chose to forgive, not for her father's sake, but for her own. It didn't mean she agreed with what he did, nor did it erase the hurt. But forgiving him freed her from the emotional burden she had carried for so long. She found that letting go of the past was the key to unlocking a brighter future. By forgiving, she allowed herself to heal, to grow, and to step into the person she was always meant to be. Forgiveness opens up a space for you to live freely, unencumbered by the pain of yesterday. It's about letting go of the grip that past wrongs have on your present. Forgiveness is an act of self-love. It's about saying, I refuse to let this anger control my life any longer. It's a declaration that you are bigger than the hurt and stronger than the person who wronged you. When you forgive, you stop giving the person who hurt you power over your emotions. You reclaim your peace. It's not about forgetting the offense, but rather choosing to move forward without carrying the burden of hatred or resentment. And in doing so, you free yourself to experience the joy, love, and fulfillment that comes with emotional liberation. You control your emotions. Our world is full of external pressures, deadlines, difficult people, overwhelming situations, and challenges that seem to arise out of nowhere. In the face of these pressures, it's easy to feel like we are at the mercy of our emotions. When things don't go our way, it feels natural to react with frustration, anger, or stress. But the truth is, you have the power to control your emotions. No matter the circumstance, the moment you take responsibility for your emotional responses, you gain the freedom to choose how you want to feel, even in the midst of chaos. Self-control is the foundation of emotional mastery. It's about realizing that while you can't always control what happens to you, you can control how you respond. The ability to stay calm and composed in difficult situations is not a sign of weakness, but a strength. Emotional control is not about suppressing your feelings. It's about choosing not to let them dictate your actions. Think of the countless times when a situation triggered an emotional response in you. Perhaps a comment from a friend, a critical remark from a boss, or an argument with a loved one. In those moments, it's easy to react impulsively, to let the emotion take over. But what if, in those moments, you chose to pause and breathe? What if you gave yourself a moment to assess the situation, to choose how you wanted to respond, rather than simply reacting out of habit? That pause, however brief, can change everything. Consider the example of Marcus, a young man who was constantly angry at his boss. No matter how much effort he put into his work, his boss always seemed to criticize him, which triggered intense feelings of frustration. Marcus would often leave the office seething with anger, his productivity for the day ruined. But then Marcus realized something important. His boss's behavior wasn't the real issue. The issue was his emotional response. He could control how he felt in those moments. So Marcus started practicing emotional control. Instead of reacting with anger when his boss criticized him, he took a deep breath and chose to respond calmly. When he felt the heat of frustration rising, he would pause, reflect, and decide how he wanted to move forward. Over time, Marcus found that he wasn't just controlling his emotions, he was also becoming more resilient and focused. The things that once made him angry no longer had the same impact. His sense of peace and emotional stability grew stronger. This practice of self-control doesn't mean you won't feel emotions. It means that you don't allow them to overpower you. You allow yourself to feel, but you don't let those feelings govern your actions. It's a practice, and like any skill, it improves with time. But when you begin to master self-control, you begin to experience life differently. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the captain of your emotional ship. Self-control also means learning to manage your reactions when others try to provoke you. Think of someone who is deliberately rude or condescending, people who try to bring out the worst in you. It's easy to fall into the trap of responding with anger, but emotional control teaches you to rise above that. You begin to recognize that their behavior is a reflection of who they are, not who you are. Their actions don't define your worth, and they certainly don't have the power to determine your emotional state. The next time you are faced with a stressful situation, remind yourself, I am in control of how I feel. I choose peace, not anger. When you practice this, you will find that you are no longer held captive by external forces. Instead, you are the one in charge of your emotional destiny. You will become unshakable, calm in the storm, and empowered in every circumstance. We are all fighting our own battles. One of the most significant breakthroughs you can make in life is learning to view others through a lens of understanding. Every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. This simple realization has the power to radically shift the way you respond to the actions of others. Instead of seeing people as obstacles or sources of frustration, you begin to see them as human beings, each with their own struggles, insecurities, and pain. We all face challenges, whether they're related to family, finances, health, or emotional well-being. People act out of their own experiences and perceptions, and often their actions have little to do with you. When you take this into account, you free yourself from unnecessary conflict and judgment. You stop taking things personally and instead adopt a mindset of empathy and compassion. Take the example of Lisa, a woman who had a colleague, Jane, who was often curt and unapproachable. Lisa had several interactions with Jane where she felt dismissed and hurt by her behavior. The natural response was to feel anger or frustration, to believe that Jane's attitude was a direct reflection of her dislike for Lisa. But one day, Lisa learned that Jane was going through a painful divorce and was emotionally drained. In that moment, Lisa understood that Jane's behavior wasn't about her, it was about Jane's own emotional turmoil. When you understand that everyone is dealing with something, it becomes easier to let go of anger. Instead of reacting to their actions, you begin to respond with patience, empathy, and understanding. Understanding people doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. It means recognizing that people's actions are often a reflection of their inner struggles. And instead of seeing them as a source of irritation, you see them as someone who is doing the best they can with what they have. This change in perspective can be especially important in close relationships. In romantic partnerships, for instance, it's easy to get upset when your partner acts distant or short-tempered. You might take their behavior personally, believing it's a sign of dissatisfaction or resentment toward you. But when you step back and consider the larger context, that your partner may be stressed about work, family issues, or personal health, you allow space for understanding. You begin to approach the situation with empathy, asking yourself, What might they be going through right now that's affecting their mood? Instead of feeling angry or rejected, you offer support and compassion. Empathy enables us to see beyond someone's surface behavior. It allows us to move away from assumptions and judgments and instead see the pain that often lies underneath. Think of the last time you were irritable or snapped at someone. It might have been because you were dealing with your own stresses, fears, or in those moments, it's not the world that is unfair, but your inner turmoil that makes it difficult to engage with others in a calm and composed manner. When we understand this truth about ourselves, it becomes easier to offer grace to others. Think of the many times you have encountered a stranger who seemed rude or impatient. You might have been tempted to respond with frustration or anger, but what if instead you took a moment to think about the possibility that they were going through something difficult? Maybe they lost their job or received bad news or were simply having a tough day. By choosing to see them as someone who is struggling, you stop letting their behavior determine your emotional state. You let go of the anger and choose to respond with kindness and patience. This principle can be especially important when it comes to children. As a parent, you may find yourself frustrated by your child's behavior, but it's essential to understand that their actions often stem from emotional needs that are not being met. When children misbehave, they are communicating something, whether it's a need for attention, validation, or security. Instead of getting angry at their behavior, you can choose to respond with understanding. You ask yourself, what do they need from me in this moment? And offer the guidance and support they are seeking rather than reacting in frustration. Understanding others is not about being passive or tolerating mistreatment. It's about seeing the whole picture. When you understand that everyone is fighting their own battle, you begin to interact with the world from a place of compassion rather than anger or frustration. You stop taking offense at every perceived slight, and you begin to recognize that most people are doing the best they can with what they have. There's incredible freedom in letting go of the need to judge others for their actions. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that people should behave a certain way, that they should treat us in a specific manner. But when you realize that their actions are often influenced by internal struggles that have nothing to do with you, it becomes easier to let go of resentment and anger. You no longer feel like a victim of their behavior. Instead, you feel empowered to respond with grace, understanding, and empathy. The ability to understand others is a gift to yourself. It's the key to unlocking peace in your relationships and in your heart. When you let go of judgment and replace it with empathy, you create a space for connection, for healing, and for growth. Your emotional state is no longer dependent on the actions of others. Instead, it becomes a reflection of your ability to see beyond the surface and recognize the humanity in everyone you meet. As you develop this deeper understanding of others, you begin to see the world not as a place full of conflict and misunderstanding, but as a place full of opportunities for connection, compassion, and mutual support. And when you begin to approach every interaction with empathy, you will find that your anger dissolves, your peace deepens, and your relationships flourish. As we come to the close of this conversation, I want you to carry with you one powerful truth. You have the ability to choose your emotional response in every situation. Life will bring challenges, difficult people, and circumstances that test your patience. But no matter what, you have the power to remain unshaken. When you understand that your peace is not for sale, when you learn to change your perspective, when you refuse to let others control your emotions, when you embrace the power of forgiveness, and when you develop the capacity to understand and empathize with others, you will walk through this life with an unbreakable sense of calm. You are not a victim to the circumstances around you. You are the master of your emotions. You hold the key to your peace, to your happiness and to your relationships. No person, no situation, and no external force can take away your inner tranquility unless you give them permission to do so. Remember, anger, frustration, and resentment only weigh you down, while forgiveness, empathy, and emotional control lift you up. The freedom to never be angered or bothered by anyone is not a distant dream. It is a choice you can make starting today. So I challenge you, choose peace, choose understanding, choose to let go, and choose to be the calm in the storm, the light in the darkness, and the strength in the face of adversity. Your emotional mastery is within your reach. Embrace it, live it, and watch how it transforms every aspect of your life. Thank you.